Hello, for our last unit, I'm assigning a very quick practical that may help you organize your arguments for your papers. This is a standard type application form that you might have to fill out in order to participate in a conference, or you might have to fill out a form like this to request funding. I adapted this form from an international conference held in Russia. Most applications will ask some form of the first question. Description of the problem the project is dedicated to solving. But it might not be obvious how you are trying to solve a problem per se. You might be trying to understand something. And if that's the case, just ask yourself, why are you trying to understand it? The second question, define the groups who could benefit from the project, might also be difficult to answer if your project is more theoretical than practical. So think about how, if you are able to understand this subject, if you're able to define it, others might be able to apply your method. As I think about your projects, the ones that I've heard so far, I can make some generalizations about how you would be filling out a form like this. Some of you are trying to understand a cultural tendency in order to be part of it. Some of you want to understand a cultural tendency in order to change it. Some of you may have a solution for an inefficient way of doing something, and you need to understand the best way to implement that change. So all of you are, in one way or another, concerned with the forces of stasis and change. You can apply the tools we've learned in this course to ponder that question. How do habits form, and how do you break out of a habit? Change is not so easy. You can't just offer a great solution and the process of natural selection will take care of the rest. So let's talk about how you might fill in the next two boxes. Quantitative analysis. You can prove that a trend exists using quantitative analysis. Anytime you make statements like most blank tend to ... you are making a quantitative evaluation. You may also use quantitative analysis to argue that a trend is in the process of forming. These are questions that you can answer with statistics, but I expect you to do more here. Also, please consider all the self-reinforcing mechanisms that we have discussed that lead to trends in behavior. Most cultural trends are self-organizing, even when they seem to be controlled by powerful top-down forces. The powerful are few in number, and they have to manufacture consent through propaganda or social pressure or peer pressure. What are some of the mechanisms? Frequency of interaction can be self-reinforcing, similarity can be self-reinforcing, proximity can be self-reinforcing. Your quantitative methods will focus on how things stay the same or change in predictable ways. How do we fill in the qualitative methods box? You may use qualitative analysis to identify the mechanisms that may lead to significant changes in a trend. Not just more of the same or an increasing number, but something new. Look at cases where behavior suddenly changes or is anomalous. Can this new behavior define a new goal for a trend or achieve a similar goal but in a different way? Here you might consider how all the self-reinforcing mechanisms that we've discussed might suddenly fail to reinforce that trend. Your qualitative analysis will require you to discuss how the role of subjective interpretation may bring about radical change. Your quantitative box will have a lot of numbers. Your qualitative box will have more narrative. But both approaches may be looking at different results from the same kinds of mechanisms. Okay? So everyone try to fill out this form for your project for Wednesday's class.